قولي سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم أكرمنا بنور الفهم واخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وافتح علينا بمعرفة العلم وسهل أخلاقنا بالحلم وجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فاتبعون أحسنه. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Again, for the other brothers, I apologize. I need to use the mic because it gives sound on that side. But so last week I went a bit too fast. We slowed down. Yeah. We slow it down. We're not in a rush. No. I have a tendency to just sometimes try to get myself excited. So let's look at the arkan of salah once again. So firstly, when we speak about a rukn, we'll keep this in Arabic. What do we mean by a rukn? A rukn of something. ما كان جزءا أساسيا. When you speak about a rukn, you're speaking about something that is essential. In other words, if there is that essential thing is not there, then that thing doesn't stand, it's incomplete. So this is what we are referring to when we speak about a rukn. So the idea is like a wall in a room. So there's a room with 4 walls. Obviously, if one of those walls were to fall, then the room is incomplete. So we're looking at things like the actions of salah, like sujood, prostration, bowing down. So the salah will not be complete, and it will not be accepted if these actions are not there. So the arkan is going to be ثلاثة عشر ركنا, is going to be 13 that we're going to discuss. We discussed it last week, but I was a bit too fast. We just slow it slightly down. So the first one is going to be a niyyah. So a niyyah, the Hanafiya don't regard the niyyah as a rukn. There's some logic behind it, because what's the difference between a rukn, which is an integral or essential component or fundamental component, and what else you can call it, a vital component? That's what a rukn is. Now a condition, alright, is something that is, so both, if the rukn is not there, the salah is not valid. If a condition not there, the condition is not there, so the salah is not valid. So in that way it looks to be the same. So if you look at tahara, which is wudu is a condition of salah, and covering the awrah, or rather saying that takbiratul ihram is a rukn in salah. If you don't have tahara, if you don't say that takbiratul ihram, your salah is not accepted. The difference is, tahara is before salah, it's not part of it. It can be there before salah, it can be there after salah. You can have wudu, it's not part of it. And you need to be in a state of wudu in salah. So the niyyah, the Hanafiya says it has to be there before you make salah, because so the Shafi'i says it's compulsory when you say your first Allahu Akbar, which is your first integral. You have to be aware of what you're doing. So they say that is an integral because it's part and parcel of the action. The Hanafiya say, look, the idea of the intention has to be there before you say Allahu Akbar, because to have it in a split second is almost impossible. So there is some logic to that, to the madhab of the Hanafiya madhab, and but both is correct. So the first integral would be the intention. So we highlight the fact that the intention is not what we say in madrasa. We learn to say certain things like nawaitu. So the English would be, I intend to perform salah, let's say for dhuhr, 4 rak'ats for dhuhr, facing the qibla. If you're the imam, then you say, I'm the imam, they the followers, I'm doing it for the sake of Allah. So those things are not transmitted via the Prophet or from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet never said that. The Prophet never said that. So these intentions that we verbalize has come from scholars. They've come from scholars, great scholars. So why would they instill something that is not there originally? Because you don't find it in the hadith. So for the basis of the intention, it is there. Because you find the Prophet ﷺ asking Aisha radiallahu anha, is there anything to eat? And then she says, there's nothing in the house. And then he verbalized and he said, فَإِنِّي صَائِمٌ, so I'm going to fast. So that was just an isolated incident where the Prophet ﷺ said that. But the Prophet ﷺ doesn't speak from his own accord. Whatever he says we can take as law. So we can see from there that he verbalized what was in his heart. So there is a basis of verbalizing, uttering what is in the heart. So scholars would recommend that you verbalize what is in the heart. If you don't do it, it's not a problem because the intention is in the heart. So, but if you utter it, it just makes it more, it makes you more serious about what you're doing. Yeah. From both or madhab. No madhab would transmit an intention from verbalizing. The intention, all would agree that it's in the heart. The idea over there is if you say something, for example, you say that I intend to perform Asr and it's Maghrib, and you just slipped with your tongue. You didn't make a mistake with your niyyah at all because the intention was there in the heart. So again, the verbalizing the intention is recommended, highly recommended, and it's respected from these scholars. But again, if you don't say it, there's absolutely no problem. All right. So that is what the niyyah is. The niyyah must be in the heart. It's not on the tongue. You'll find another instance where the Prophet ﷺ actually verbalized for Hajj as well. We just passed the season of Hajj now. So that was also an example. So I don't think there's any problem with a niyyah. It's very difficult not to have a niyyah. You see the problem, if you're going to emphasize what you say, people are going to be confused. Sometimes people are confused because we don't understand Arabic. So now we must say nawaitu farda salati dhuhr and all the stuff. So sometimes if you overemphasize the fact that or you have the wrong understanding rather, that's your intention, now you're going to make salah and thinking, did I make my intention or did I not make my intention? Meaning you had your intention there all along. So that is number one. And number two was standing, and we did discuss standing last week. The Prophet ﷺ says, "Man salla qa'iman fahuwa afdal, wa man salla qa'idan falahu nisf." So we had that two contradicting hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ, on the one hand, he said you have to stand to the best of your ability. If you can't, then you can sit. If you can't, then you can. But in other narrations, you find that the Prophet is almost allowing you to sit, but you get half the reward. So that is a contradiction. And this is why we study a madhab, because you'll have contradicting hadith that is both authentic. So what do you do with that contradiction? You can't say the one is weak and the one we accept. So you need to look at it in context. So the one is referring where you have to stand and you don't have a choice is referring to the fard. And this is obviously for those who can. It's according to your ability. For those who can stand, must stand, they don't have a choice. If you sit while you are able to stand in your fard salah, you have lost an integral, a fundamental principle, and it's like one of those walls of the roof, or rather of the room has fell down, and there's no complete room, so that the salah was not performed. Okay. However, if you are making a sunnah, if there is a need for you to sit, you may sit. If there's no need for you to sit, you may also sit, but you're going to lose the reward. So if a youngster that is full of energy, he has absolutely no excuse, he just wants to sit for the fact of sitting, he may do so. The sunnah salah will still be valid, it will still be intact in the sense that it's not invalid. But he will lose the reward. Okay, he will lose if he's sitting half the reward. So that only applies to the fard. So this you may use maybe sometimes when you're tired. We don't want to encourage that, but sometimes people are just very tired and you don't want to stand. You have the choice. It's totally up to you. If you want to sit, right, for the sunnah salahs. Then we discussed also, I'm just going through this again, the takbiratul ihram. The word takbir, so this is the third one. There's 13, remember. Takbiratul ihram is to say Allahu Akbar. It's the first Allahu Akbar. None of the other times when you say Allahu Akbar is an integral. So if you don't say Allahu Akbar for the rest of your salah is still intact. Only the first one is called the takbiratul ihram. And the reason it's called ihram is because you are making certain things haram for you when you say that first Allahu Akbar. You can't eat, you can't drink, you can't move a lot. You can move, but you can't move a lot. We will see what is a lot and what is a little movement. And what else can you do? You can't talk, yeah, you can't talk. So those three things, it makes, by you saying Allahu Akbar, that becomes, that's why it's called the takbiratul ihram. None of the other Allahu Akbars in the salah is like that. So only the first Allahu Akbar is an integral, the others are not. Now when we say that Takbiratul Ihram is an integral, we're not saying moving the hands is an integral, we're simply saying it. So if you say Allahu Akbar while your hands are down, that is fine. In terms of you fulfilling the third integral of Salah. So we want to look at the integrals, then we're going to look at what is Sunnah, and then we're going to look at how to complete the Salah to perfection. So the next one, each of these things, when it comes to actions, you have to say what is, like we're going to speak about the Fatiha being an integral. Those things, those Fatiha has to be said properly. Takbiratul Ihram has to be said properly with all its harakat. It cannot be, the pronunciation has to be as best as you can, By the way, when it comes to making a mistake in your recitation in the Fatiha, obviously the Shafi madhab regard this as a compulsory integral. We'll speak about the Hanafi point of view soon. But what is a major mistake and what is a minor mistake? A major mistake in pronunciation is when you change a letter. Like you change it completely, like it's not the same letter anymore. A light mistake is when you say the right letter, but you just can't say it properly. So some of us struggle to pronounce certain letters, like the dad might be a difficult letter to pronounce. And if you are struggling to pronounce it and you don't quite get it right, there's no problem with that. That's not a major. It's only if you change. Like instead of saying walad dal, you say walab dalin. So you change the dal into a ba, and then you make it a dal. So that is completely wrong, and that is not something that is excused. This is obviously according to your ability. If you don't have the ability to recite, and you're trying, you're making some effort, then Allah will accept. But if you do have the ability and you do have the time and you're not making the effort, then we only have ourselves to blame. So that was the Takbiratul Ihram. The next, so that was the third one, right? The fourth one is the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha, and we're not going to mention the hadith like we mentioned last week. So reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, according to the Shafi'i madhab, it will be including Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and then the Hanafiya would not regard Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim as part and parcel of the Fatiha. So you might find that strange. You might find it strange, but it's a very minor disagreement. The Hanafiya would say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim softly. The idea is it recommended to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim before you start with Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, or is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim part and parcel of the Fatiha? So both have their views, and both views are respected. Follow the madhab that you are on. Okay, so that is Surah Al-Fatiha. The next one is then the ruku'. So we have the niyyah, then we have standing, and in the standing you have to recite Surah Al-Fatiha, and after that is the bowing down. وَهُوَ شَرْعًا. So the proof of that, we won't look at the proofs now, just let's look what is it again to bow down. وَلَا بُدَّ لِصِحَّةِ الرُّكُوعِ مِنَ الْتِزَامِ الْمُصَلِّ مَا يَلِي. Number one, you must lean to the extent بالقدر المذكور وهو بلوغ كفه إلى ركني, what says ركبته. You must lean until your hands touch your knees. Obviously, if you can. If you can't, then you can't. But you have to do it to the best of your ability. That your hands must touch your knees at least, right? And you have to remain there. There has to be a pause, and the intention must be there. So the intention has to be there for all these movements. So the best way to perform the ruku' is that your back is straight, and the nape, the back of your neck, and your back has to be straight. That's not always easy if you don't have a good posture. So it actually, if children, the Prophet ﷺ says that you need to command your children to perform salah while they're 7. And from 10, you need to start taking them to account. You need to start punishing them, not hitting them, but taking them to account, you know. And if they are performing these actions from that such a tender younger age, and then it's easier for them to be in this, well, it's healthy. Even if you're older and you try to perform these actions and you haven't been making salah before, either because you just embrace Islam or you just being neglectful, it's never too late. It's always a good thing to stretch the muscles for now and then. So that would be the ruku'. We discussed it. I'm just running through this one more time. Then the straightening up. So obviously in the ruku' you have to pause again. So how much do we have now? There's 5. Huh? So this is going to be the 6th one. The 6th one is going to be coming up, right? Coming up from your ruku'. So again, the ruku' is. Let me just mention something as well. When you stand, this is all part of the sunnah, so I shouldn't actually be mentioning it now, but you do find there's people that actually dig their toes into your feet. And if you came across that, they stand very wide, right? Very, very wide, and they actually go a bit extreme. So you have to be standing mu'tadilan, meaning you have to be standing normal, right? The hadith that they follow with regards to pushing their feet wide apart is a hadith that comes in either Bukhari or Muslim. I think it is Bukhari, where some companions used to do that because out of extremity to keep the line straight. But the word extremity mean there is actually contrary to what is normal. Okay, stand straight in your line, meaning you have to stand like a normal person, like you would stand when you normally stand. I just thought I'd mention that now. So when you're coming up, right, you come up still till your back is straight, and that will be the 6th condition, and you have to pause in there. The 7th one now, when you're going right down to the sajda, we just repeat everything of the sajda again. So this is when you have to put your head on the ground. So kashful jibhati inda mulamasatiha al-ard. So number 1, the forehead must be uncovered, like we said before. So if you have a big turban on, if you have a thick something, right, that's stopping you from your head touching the ground, then you have not made a sajda. Number 2, for the sajda to be correct, is ayakuna sujudu ala sab'ati a'da. It has to be on 7. It has to be on 7 limbs. So the Prophet ﷺ says, I have been commanded to go on 7. So it's the forehead, and then he indicated to the nose, right? So ala jibha, he said on the jibha, then he indicated with his hand to the nose, then the 2 hands, right? So I don't know if that's considered as 1 or 2. If it is considered as 2, it will be 4. Then the knees, and then that would be 6. Wa atrafil qadamain, and then the feet, right? So some of that is considered to be 1, some is considered to be 2, but it comes to 7. ولكن لا يجب أن يكشف من هذه الأعضاء إلى الجبهة. But the only thing that has to be uncovered is the forehead. So that's important, because sometimes we get cold, we have on socks, and we misunderstand this hadith. Think, look, because the forehead must be open, also the feet must be open. But it's not. The Prophet ﷺ many a time wore khuf, right? He wore khuf, and there was also socks in that time. But the forehead, there wasn't compensation given for the forehead to touch the ground. So that is going to أن ترتفع أسافله على الأعالي. Yeah, so the bum basically must be higher than the top part of your body as far as possible. وأن لا يسجد على ثوب متصل بحيث يتحرك بحركه. This is again interesting. I said I don't want to make mention it. So according to this opinion, whoever is performing salah on something that moves with him is wrong. Okay? It nullifies his sajda. So if I'm making salah on my sleeve, if I go down and I put my sleeve on there, then if according to this view again, I'm not aware of differences of views of this, I'll have to check it. Okay, but if you have something that is on you, right, and you block your head from touching the ground, then you have not made a sajda. Okay, so obviously there may be other views, I'm not aware of it. Okay, I'll have to check that. And then obviously your intention to go down, and you have to pause in that particular posture. So that is the sajda. Nothing, not too complicated. When you're making your sajda, your fingers are closed. Fingers are closed facing the qibla, in line with your shoulders. It's spread out a bit. I don't seek the practicality of that in the way we stand. I don't know. I've tried it many a times. If you try to push your hands out away from your sides and lift your elbows up, you tend to be pushing into the next person. Maybe if everybody could be doing that, then your shoulders or your elbows will be touching each other. But I haven't seen that. Then number 8, al-julusu bayna sajdatain, sitting between the two prostrations. And we discussed that again. There's 2 different ways of sitting. The one is when your bum is actually touching the ground, but that's the last sitting. That's a more comfortable position, so that you're going to sit longer, because for the last tahiyyat, that you only sit for the last tahiyyat, that's when your left leg comes out under the right leg, so part of your left foot sticks out on that side, okay, and then your bum is shifted where your left foot would have been, okay, so the bum is onto the ground. That's only for the last sitting. Otherwise, you just basically dip the left foot and you sit on the left foot. You just you just dip the left foot and you sit on the left foot. So you put the left foot flat on the ground like that, and you put your bum onto the left foot. But for the last sitting, you're going to push your left foot through, and you sit on the. Is that fine? Okay. Then obviously the tashahud and everything that must be said in the tashahud, that is compulsory. And this is only the last one. The last tashahud is compulsory. So if you're making maghrib and you realize you didn't make the second tashahud, you didn't sit for it, and you didn't say your tashahud, and you came up, you shouldn't go down, because that's a sunnah. Standing up is a rukn, it's an integral. You can't leave a rukn for a sunnah. Right? If you miss the sunnah, you miss the sunnah. You can't go back to it. You're going to change the form of salah, which is not permissible. And then the wording of that, we can look at it again, as well as the wording of the tashahud. So that will all come to 14. With regards to sitting in the tashahud, you have to sit there. There's certain things you have to say. You need to say the shahada, you need to say the salawat. So that's all counted as a separate rukn. But we usually just say the entire tahiyyah. So we can look at the adhkar. We can look at the adhkar of salah afterwards. So that's just going over what we did last week. Hope that wasn't too fast. That's all right. Now we come to something, the sunan of salah. So I would recommend, I would advise that if you're finding a problem perfecting your salah, not connecting with Allah in your salah, you're finding it very hard to perform the fard, it's difficult to get up for fajr or something like that. Sometimes perfecting the salah is not focusing on the integrals, it's actually focusing on the finer details, which is the sunnah. Because once you try and perfect the sunnah, automatically you'll be perfecting what is compulsory. So never should we try to leave this out, understanding that the sunnah is just the sunnah. So if you forget it, you forget it. If you leave it out, you leave it out. So the sunnahs are divided into 2 categories. The one is a major sunnah, and the one is a lighter sunnah. The major one is called ab'ad, or parts. Why is it called parts? It's called parts because it's as if it's part of your salah. It's almost as if it's an integral, because the integral is an essential part. You can't leave it out. But the major sunnahs, it's as if it's part of your salah, in that sense that you shouldn't be leaving it out. If you do leave a major sunnah out, which we'll go through now, you can make it up with a forgetful prostration. We call it a sujood sahwi. If you forget a major sunnah, but if you forget a minor sunnah, you can't make it up with a sujood sahwi. You simply leave it off. So let's look at what's the major sunnahs and what's a minor sunnah. So the sunnah, first of all, that is before salah, which is your adhan and the iqamah, which we discussed already. Taking the satra, or sutra rather, which is something we discussed that he has to put in front of him. What can also suffice is a sajjada. It's a musla, what we call a musla, because the musla does designate this is the area of your salah. Then there's sunnahs that has to be performed during salah. فَالْأَبْعَادُ So this is what are the ab'ad, the major sunnahs. The first one is at-tashahud al-ula. So in Maghrib you have two tashahuds. Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib and Isha, two tashahuds. Fajr only have one. So in Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib and Isha, the first one is a major sunnah. The first tashahud is a major sunnah. ويقصد به التشهد في الجلوس الذي لا يعقبه سلام وهو جلوس. So this is obviously every tahiyyat that's not followed by a salam. If it's followed by salam, it's your last one. Yeah, it's your last one. So الذي جاء في حديث let's read a hadith on that. جاء في حديث المسيء صلاته عند أبي داود. There was someone that didn't perform his salah properly, and فإذا جلست, the Prophet ﷺ says, when you have sat في وسط الصلاة, when you have sat in the middle of your salah, referring to the first tahiyyat, فَطْمَئِنَّ, then be still, وَافْتَرِشْ, that iftirash, that's the word I was looking for. Iftirash is when you put your left foot on the floor like this, right? And then you sit on it. That's called iftirash. Now you're going to sit like iftirash when you are in your first tahiyyat, you sit iftirash. When it is in the last one, you sit, they call it tawarruk, it's basically putting your bum on the ground. So the Prophet ﷺ says, waftarish, you have to sit like that, iftirash. فَخِذَكَ الْيُسْرَى ثُمَّ تَشَهَدْ, then you make your tashahud. So, وَالدَّلِيلُ عَلَى أَنَّهُ سُنَّةٌ. How do we know it's sunnah? The Prophet ﷺ قام في صلاة الظهر. Once he stood up for صلاة الظهر. وعليه جلوس فلما أتم صلاته سجد سجدتين. He was supposed to sit, but then he stood up. So if in one dhuhr salah, the Prophet was supposed to sit for his tahiyyat like he usually does, but then he stood up, right? So what he did was he made sujudu sahwi at the end, meaning a forgetful prostration to make up that. Okay, so that's how we know it's not compulsory. It's not a compulsory act. أي للسهو تعريضا عند التشهد الأولى الذي ترك بترك الجلوس له فلو كان ركنا لاضطر إلى it. So if it was a rukn, he would have obviously just go back to it. But he didn't go back to it. But he made a sujood sahwi. So it shows you that it's sunnah, and it is that type of a sunnah, which means you can make a prostration for a forgetful prostration or forgetful. So that's the first one. Simple. The first tashahud in Maghrib, Dhuhr, and Asr and Isha. The second one, as-salatu ala nabi aqiba tashahud al-ula. So this is like part and parcel. Saying salawat on the Prophet is also a major sunnah. So in other words, you sat, you did your tahiyyat, but you didn't say salat on the Prophet, salawat on the Prophet in the sitting. That's a major sunnah. And then number 3, al-julusu li tashahud al-ula. Saying salawat on the Prophet. Number 5 is kunut عند الاعتدال من الركعة الثانية في صلاة الفجر في آخر الركعة من الوتر من نصف الثاني من رمضان. So the 5th one is going to be kunut. Kunut, according to the Shafi'iyya, is when you're coming up from the second rak'at في صلاة الفجر. So when you say Allahu Akbar, we go down for ruku, second rak'at, you say Sami Allahu liman hamida, according to the Shafi'i. When they say the kunut, Allahumma hdina fi man hadayt wa afini. So then also, when else do the Shafi'iyya say the kunut? They do it in the 5th from the 15th on of Ramadan. So that will be a major sunnah. The Hanafiya would not make the kunut in the Fajr Salah. They don't make a kunut in the Fajr Salah. They both have their proofs. Of the proofs of the what is this? Actually, let me just mention one more thing. وفي اعتدال الركعة الأخيرة من أي صلاة بالنسبة للقنوت النازلة. There's also a qunut which is a nazila. A nazila when there's a calamity, like in Gaza now, right? So in Gaza there's a calamity happening, right? Because of that genocide, you can make qunut. So that now is also a major. So qunut, according to the Shafi'iyya, 3 times. Number 1, the second rakat of Fajr, like when you're coming up, for you bowing down, you come up, you can make the qunut. That's where the qunut must be made. And then Also in the last 15 days, or from the 15 days onwards in Ramadan, and then also when a calamity strikes. So that's when qunut is actually made. It comes in one of the narrations of Ahmad from the Sahabi Anas, ما زال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقنط في الصبح حتى فارق الدنيا. The Prophet never left the qunut until he died. Once he started making the qunut, he never left the qunut out until he passed away. And that's one of the proofs of the Shafi'i madhab. Also from Anas, قد سئل قنت النبي الصبح. Anas was asked, did the Prophet make qunut for subh, meaning fajr? قال نعم, he said yes. So it was said to him, وقنت قبل الركوع, did he make the qunut before ruku'? قال, he said no, بعد الركوع, he did it after ruku'. Okay, so that hadith is very explicit. It comes in Bukhari, it also comes in Muslim. وتؤدى سنة القنوت بأن يثنى المصلي على الله. So qunut is made by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then obviously the dua that we know. بأي لفظ شاء كأن يقول, you can make dua with any type of تؤدي سنة القنوت بأن يثني المصلي. You make, first of all, you praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you can make any dua that you know, like you can say Allah اغفر لي يا غفور ولكن الكمال في أدائها. So but the best way to do it is how the Prophet ﷺ, what he has taught us, اللهم اهدني فيمن هديت وعافني فيمن عافيت وتولني فيمن توليت وبارك لي فيما أعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت, until the end of the hadith. But any dua will suffice. The Hanafiya do not make it a major sunnah in Fajr. One of the reasonings is that this qunut is only recommended at the time of a calamity, right? Our counter argument from the Shafi perspective is that, well, he never stopped until he left the dunya. So it might have been that he started at a calamity, but the thing is he never left it off, right? Yeah. Yes. 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 Even if you know the qunut. Yes, Surah Al-Fatiha is a, but the easiest one is Allahumma ghfirli. Allahumma ghfirli. And then once you learn the qunut properly, then you can do that. But even if you know the qunut, you can still say anyone that you want to. But it's just better and preferred to always stick to what the Prophet ﷺ did. Okay. So that is the qunut. Then we have, so that's done. So now we're looking at minor sunnahs. We look at the minor sunnahs. Yeah, go for it. No, go. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I don't know what is recommended, but it is permissible. See, what happens is, once you follow the Imam up until his first, you see, you have to be with the Imam with all the integrals. You have to follow him. If you don't follow him, then the problem is you're not a follower. For you to be a follower, you must do as he does. If you don't do as the Imam does, then you're not a follower. And if you intended to follow and you're not following, then you're actually breaking your own salah. But just before I get to the answer, you can intend by yourself to break away. But you must make that intention by yourself before you break away. You say, okay, I'm going to break away from my Imam now. I'm going to continue the rest of the salah on my own. You have to do that by yourself. You can't just not follow. But when it comes to the end of the salah and the Imam says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and you followed him up till there, that is the last integral. Because the second one is not an integral. Which means at that particular point, you can make the sujood sahwi. Because there's two places you can make the sujood sahwi. The one is, according to the Shafi madhab, is before. Okay? And some opinions is that you can make it afterwards. So basically after you say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and then you can greet Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, then you can make it. Okay, you can make it.
So once you see the Assalamu
Yeah.
alaikum,
Because now you're safe.
away from the Imam.
Yeah, because now you're safe. Because also what you can do, once he says Assalamu alaikum, you can stay in your, because that's actually a place of dua. So once he says Assalamu alaikum and there's no sujood sahwi that you need to make, you can still stay in your salah. Because you can stay making dua at that particular point. Yes.
That's the explanation the Sheikh gave us.
Okay.
He didn't do the first one said
Okay.
follow it.
Yes.
You get that explanation.
Yeah. Mm. 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 Okay. Yeah. 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 Okay. But you see, it could be a mistake that you remember there are the tashahud. You could have left out the salawat that you can't hear. You say you could have sit for the tahiyyat, but if maybe forgot the salawat. So that's yeah. So if you're following your imam, it's totally fine. Did that answer the question? Okay. Then now we're doing the hayat. I like this hayat because this is not something we focus on. Where do you keep your hands? Like must the finger be here? Must the finger be like this? And this is something we normally focus on because we do it once or twice and then we forget about it. So this is again perfecting and reminding us. So the hayat. So if you leave out the hayat, remember, don't make sujood sahwi. The first one is رفع اليدين عند تكبيرة الإحرام وعند ركوع والرفع منه. So raising the hands is a minor sunnah. Okay, it's a minor sunnah. So when you say all the takbeers that you so the first takbir, when you're saying Allahu Akbar, which is your takbiratul ihram, you can raise your hands. The correct way to do it is the description from the hadith is to raise it shoulder length. Okay, shoulder length. So you're going to have this little bit variations over here. Okay, so shoulder length is this, where your hands and your palms are faced towards the qibla. Okay, your fingers are not together and they're not spread out purposefully, but if you leave them, they will spread out naturally. Okay, so it's in this particular way. All right. So I'll read this to you. So when are you going to make when are you going to raise your hands? By the first Allahu Akbar, then وعند تكبيرة الإحرام وعند الركوع, when you're going down to ruku'. Many people leave this one out. So if you're standing and you're ready to go down to the ruku', to the bowing position, then you raise your hands again. So you say Allahu Akbar and you go down. So many people leave that one out. So you're basically standing and you're ready to go to ruku', then you do this again, Allahu Akbar. Okay. So that is a minor sunnah over there. عند الركوع والرفع منه, and also when you come up from the ruku', so you're standing in your bowing position, not prostration. Obviously you're bowing, and when you come up, Sami Allah, then you raise your hands again. So there's 3 times you need to raise your hands. So by the beginning, when you're going down to the prostration, to the bowing, and when you come up from the bowing, 3 times this far. وكيفية أداء هذه السنة. So it's nice to listen to the description from the hadith. أن يرفع كفيه مستقبلا بها القبلة. First of all, raise it facing the qibla. So we can all agree that can be anywhere now, just facing the qibla. That's number 1. منشورتي الأصابع, your fingers has to be spread out. Okay, spread out. So again, you don't have to force it open. It will be spread out by just leaving it in this particular way. And then محاذيا بإبهامه what's this? بإبهاميه شحمتي الأذنين. So it's the thumbs will be in line with the earlobes. So it's just about here, not touching. So there's a misunderstanding with regards to that. It's not touching the ears. It's in line with the ears. The problem is if you're touching the ears, your palms is not going to be facing in front of you. You with me? So it's basically raising to this. So I know a lot of us learned in madrasa. Some people even do this because they think or what they heard or they remembered. They remembered thumbs and earlobes. Okay, this. So it's not. So again, facing the qibla, raising it, shoulder length. and the thumbs more or less can't be more or less face in line with the yeah. Yes. So for everything with the ladies is exactly the same as the men, except that the ladies will keep everything closer to their bodies. Closer to their bodies. So when men will be more out like this, females will be more closer to their bodies. So وعلى أي أن تكون كفاءً. So yeah. So basically the palms will be open. So I'll give you the hadith, right? This hadith comes in Bukhari. It's the reference 705. It comes in Muslim in the hadith 390. You can check it on your phone. Right? The عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنه قال, he says رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, I saw the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم افتتح التكبير. He started and he opened up his salah with the takbir. So he's saying his first takbir. فرفع يديه. I saw him raise his hands. حين يكبر, while he made the first takbir. حتى يجعلهما حذو منكبيه. Now this is the description of who? Abdullah ibn Umar. He says, I saw him raise his hands until it was in line with his shoulders. Okay? So you see, there's like a more or less here. So his palms was in line with his shoulders. Right? وَإِذَا كَبَّرَ لِلرُّكُوعِ فَعَلَ مِثْلَهُ. When he went down for the ruku', he did the same thing. He raised his hands again. And وَإِذَا قَالَ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ لِمَنْ حَمِدَ. When he said that, meaning he's coming up from bowing down now, he said سَمِعَ اللَّهُ لِمَنْ حَمِدَ. He raised his hands again. رَبَّنَا وَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ. وَيَفْعَلُ ذَلِكَ حِينَ يَسْجُدُ. He also did that when he went down for sujood. So he went down when he went down for sujood, he did that again. Allahu Akbar. Alright? So that's 4 times you have to say it now. حين يسجد ولا حين يرفع رأسه من السجود. But he didn't do it when he lifted up his head from the sujood. That's the only time you don't do it. Because you're on the ground. So when you're coming up, you're saying Allahu Akbar. Don't raise your hands again. Now you're in a sitting position. There's difference of where you must keep different places that you must keep your fingers when you're sitting. Now let's make sure that's clear. So when do you raise your hands? At 4 times. So when you're opening up your salah, you're saying Allahu Akbar. So this would be not according to the description. It would be wrong. It's just not according to the descriptions and the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ. We want to perfect our salah. So the idea is to raise your hands facing Qibla. So it's and keep it fluid, not anything rigid. So it's like this, Allahu Akbar, and try to raise your hands as you're saying the takbir. So it will be like this, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, right? So again, fingers apart, facing the Qibla, in line with the shoulders, more or less where this is in line with this. So it's a bit higher. I'm not keeping it right, am I? This is too low. Have to go higher like that. So we get lazy also. So over time it becomes like this. So it becomes or like this. Many people just do this, Allahu Akbar, because it's just maybe a forgetfulness and become lazy. So now it's a time to actually take these teachings and practice it. Let's live it where it's supposed to be. So that is we do it 4 times. When you open your salah, when you're going down for the ruku again, we say Allahu Akbar. Right? When you come up again, Sami Allahu liman hamida. And when you go down again, when you go down for your sujood, that one is often left out as well. Right? When you're going right down, you raise your hand once again. So there's 4 times that you have. Yeah. So the only time you do that, good question, because I left that one out. When you're coming up from the sujood, right? You only raise your hands by Allahu Akbar if this is after tahiyyat. So if you sat for tahiyyat, then like when your second rakat for dhuhr, second rakat for maghrib, second rakat for isha, so you're obviously coming up now. After you're sitting, you're getting up now. Sami Allahu Akbar, and you raise your hands once again. Okay, once you're standing, obviously. So when you're coming up, once you're up, you can raise your hands once again. So that's in the second rakat. So that's 5 different times now. Then, what's the time now? What time is Isha? Okay, we can round up now soon. We can round up another 6 minutes. Yeah? No, there's nothing. Go for it.
If my understanding is correct,
yeah.
the only one major sunnah the one
Mm-hmm.
big sunnah.
Yeah, big sunnah. No. There's the kunut, right? Yeah. And then there's the first sitting in the tashahud. The first sitting. And then saying the salawat in there as well. Okay. So if you leave those things out, you have to make sujood sahwi. The one that we normally forget out, the one that we normally forget, that you'll come across in salah, is when somebody leave out their first tahiyat. They leave out their first tahiyat. Then they normally just make, that's something common. That's common. Also, if you leave out a rukn, you have to go back to it. But that's when we do sujood sahwi, we'll do all that. So if you leave out a rukn, you have to go back to it, and then you must also make sujood sahwi, which is the prostration of forgetfulness. Here's something interesting. وضع يده يمنى على ظهره ظهر يده اليسرى وذلك في الوقوف. When you're standing, you put your right hand over your left hand. Okay. One of the wisdoms of this is not from a fiqh perspective, it's more from a heart perspective, is that you put your right the right hand is actually the hand of barakah, so you put that in front and you hide your left hand. Okay, this is one of a wisdom that you can remember. How do you do that? أيضع يده اليمنى على ظهر الكف والرسخ. So it has to cover part of the hand and part of the wrist. So it's going to be here. It's going to be here. Right hand. It's going to be part of the right hand. The palm has to be on the back of your left hand. So partly on the hand and partly on the wrist. ويقبض على اليسرى بأصابع يده. And you keep onto them with your fingers. You're going to keep onto the onto that part that I told you cover. ويكون محل ذلك تحت صدر وفوق. Okay, so where must you position it? So it's going to be like this, all right? Other narrations you can keep one finger out or two fingers out. You have that option, one finger or two fingers. And then ويكون محل ذلك تحت صدر وفوق سرته. Where must this be? It must be under the chest and above the navel, according to the Shafi'iyya. So what happens is the hadith on this vary. The Hanafiya goes to the navel. They'll keep it to the bottom. One of the wisdoms of the Hanafiya that they mention, again, not from a fiqh perspective, just the wisdom, is that it like put your desires down. It's just, right, just a wisdom. So you find the hadith that is all authentic, where the Prophet kept it by his chest, sadr. And then some hadith says under the chest. And some hadith says the chest region. So it seems as if the Shafi'i madhab are making, they're joining the hadith and they're saying inda sadr, meaning so it's going to be under the chest, because if you're under the chest, you're still by the chest. If you're on top of the navel, you're still by the chest, and you're still by the navel region as well. So it's more to the middle. Okay, so it's going to be in front of you, not to the left. Some people have a misunderstanding, they keep by their heart. Yeah. No, so it's. Yeah. So I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say it's wrong. I've also seen many people standing like that. Yeah. So maybe there was a description in there. So I'm trying to make excuses that best as they can, because we have lots of respect for those scholars. There could be a misunderstanding from the text. There could be a misunderstanding from how it was learned. It could be one view that is very far, but definitely, yeah, the idea the Prophet ﷺ kept it. It was very simple. Part of the hand and part of the wrist covered, one or two fingers open like this. Okay, so it's like that. So this is going to be keep one open, right? And then in the middle, just be under the chest. According to the Hanafiya, a little bit lower. Okay, it will be a little bit lower. But anything else, it's not wrong. It's just remember, this is part of this sunnah is a minor sunnah. If you leave it out, meaning if you make irsal. By the way, the Prophet ﷺ also made irsal. Irsal is when you release your hands. And I'm going to mention this because whenever you keep anything in front of you, there's like 3 times weight in your back, especially if you're standing for tarawih or long salah, then you might find your lower back starts getting sore. That's usually you're keeping your hands too long. So then just leave your hands, let it go. Because the Malikis do that as well. But besides the Maliki, it's also sunnah. It's a sunnah to let your hands go. There's a name called for it. It's called irsal. Irsal is just, so you'll find certain scholars, if you're watching them, what they do is they stand like this, then they release slowly. Then they keep again. It's not that they're fidgety, it's just they're practicing on the various descriptions to the best of their ability to how the hadith should be performed. The Maliki goes to the extent that they stand. So because the description is there in the way the Prophet ﷺ stood. Yeah. 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 So none of those descriptions actually comes. So this is recommendation from certain men. That's as far as I'll go. Yeah, certain men. Yeah.
So you can have to
Yeah, if he allows me. Yeah. Yeah. If you can catch them in the sajda, then you can. Yes. If you can catch them in the sajda, yeah. In that way, it's actually not fanatical about your mother. It's nice actually, where you stand behind a Hanafi, stand behind a Shafi. You know, and you have certain situations where they refuse to stand behind each other, and it's out of a sunnah action. It's not. Okay. Barakallah. I think we're in there. Jazakallah. Barakallah. I went slower. Barakallah. Shukran. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum.